Hello, world. My next guest is the CEO of TopRank Marketing, a B2B marketing agency providing content, influence, and search marketing solutions for enterprise B2B brands. Cited by the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, and Forbes for his marketing expertise, he has blogged about marketing since 2003 and has given 250 plus presentations in over 18 countries on best practices in B2B marketing. He also publishes the State of B2B Influencer Marketing Report and is host of the Inside B2B Influence podcast. With me here today is CEO of TopRank Marketing, Lee Odden. Lee, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Jen, I am very much ready. Yes, I'm excited.
We've
third time's a charm, and you're so patient. I am so appreciative of your good nature and your patience, and this is awesome to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. Listen, speaking of patience, so I'm currently based out of Tel Aviv. And there's a word my toddler is learning in school called savlanut, which is literally translated to patience. And so it's, it's a theme in our house lately. So I'm practicing it as well. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. But to get radically transparent, you have quite the background. If you say your name in pretty much any B2B marketing circle, the crowd usually goes wild. People usually know who he is to some degree. But before we dive into the episode, I was hoping you might be able to give us a brief look at your professional journey and how you actually found your career in B2B marketing.
Sure. I actually started a long time ago. In fact, my history text would be like the opening of a Star Wars movie, long ago, and selling websites over the phone. And people would fax us their brochures and we would make websites out of that. So way back when, what's a fax and what's a brochure, actually, for that matter. Learned SEO and, a little bit of web dev and got into content and social and even influence. So the B2B part of my career really kicked off when we signed as a very small agency, McKesson. McKesson is a Fortune 15 pharma tech company, and they had a business unit that was B2B called Provider Technologies, and we were providing SEO services to them. And when a Fortune 15 company hires your tiny little boutique agency, you start to think, wow, we might be onto something here. So we really doubled down on B2B, and we helped launch Marketo. We signed Dell, LinkedIn, SAP. We've been providing blog and SEO and other marketing related services to LinkedIn for like 9 years now. So long history in the B2B space. And the cool thing is, when you're architecting what we like to call a best answer content, it's different than consumer, right? There's not just one buyer, there's a committee, there's a group of people, and it's not just on one channel. It's to a multitude of places where people are searching for information to try and find credible sources of info so they can make that big enterprise purchase or whatever it is, right? And that's exciting. There's a hunt to that, right? And I think one of the other things that evolved with B2B is this, you've heard of B2B standing for boring to boring.
Oh, have we? Have we ever?
And so I feel like it's our mission to break free, to help B2B break free of that boring, right? And so we have it as a mission even this year to sort of elevate, to do what we can as a small organization that's hyper focused to help elevate the B2B marketing industry. By providing better, not just better B2B marketing services to clients, as any agency owner like myself would say, but by going about it in a more meaningful way, a more purposeful way.
So listen, I'm listening to everything you said. I completely agree with you on so many levels, right? Boring to boring. We've heard it all, getting into the B2B marketing industry. I have a lot of people lately giving me calls, at a university, like, well, listen, I could go B2C and it sounds so much more fun and interesting. Why do you work in B2B, right? it's equally as exciting. And I don't think we always do the best at showing how exciting our world can be. But listening to what you were saying about the content and SEO, the only thing going through my head right now is what's keeping you up at night professionally in this space?
Sure, sure. Well, so for me to say something like we're trying to elevate the B2B industry means that there's a very high standard to be set, right? There's a high degree, a high expectation, for our clients, especially when you're talking about some of these large enterprise organizations. They're not, there's no slips allowed. And so the pressure's on.
Yeah.
And so what keeps me up at night is what can I do to engage a team that is 100% virtual and keep them motivated and on task and inspired, and that's a tough thing. And it's interesting, we now have more people that joined us virtually than ever worked together with us in our Minneapolis office, right? And that's a tipping point really for any organization to have more people virtual that have always been virtual. 9 people working in 9 different states now, and so I think about what is it that we're doing on an ongoing basis to engage our team members, to do what we can to create tactile experiences if we can. So we're shipping stuff out all the time, obviously, but we're not meeting together. And what can we do to listen? What can we do to capture information to make sure our team members are being served, they're being supported, they're being motivated, they know what their goals are, they're given challenges, they're giving the reporting to help them know that they're on track or not. And that's part of management, right? But in a digital environment, it's just different. There's no walk by and have these anecdotal conversations, which really could be quite meaningful for someone. I can't walk the halls anymore like I used to. I have to do it very differently. I have to make appointments and have Zoom calls, right? It's just not the same thing. So we're trying to do more to work and connect formally, but also informally, have those digital happy hours, and find ways to really connect the culture, to build the culture, evolve or elevate the culture. And we now have more people that have been referred by other team members than ever. So what's really helped is there's quite a few people on our team now that have pre-existing relationships with each other before joining the agency, and those bonds that have existed before coming into the agent, those have helped a lot.
That's incredible. Listen, the way we work has completely changed, and I think all of us, we're in the same boat. What is one thing that you've learned about the way we work today that you wish you would have known sooner?
Well, obviously, the amount of time we're spending collecting or listening, just listening, and empathizing with work and behavior differences is more acute right now because of the digital. Digital creates some obstacles to that because you don't have in-person and informal communication. So the empathy and the listening aspect of management is one thing I wish we, I mean, I know that now, right? We have to, and it's quite productive for everybody involved. Whereas we kind of took those things for granted, I think, when we were in an all in-person work environment.
Yeah, I could definitely agree. And, I'll just share, radically transparent. Something that I've learned over the last 2 years about this was I never paid attention when we were in person, right? We'd have a meeting and then the meeting would finish and I'd always turn to my right to my colleague that we worked on a lot of projects together. And I'd always have like a mini meeting after that meeting, whether it was a debrief or event session or an eye roll or a laugh or whatever it might have been. But right after, and sometimes the best ideas would come right after that unstructured little side talk from the post meeting. And what I learned is that the past 2 years that has disappeared, that like the Zoom goes off or the Slack shuts off. How do you create that moment? So I'm still trying to figure out how to create that, because I think that is also like that whole kind of people to people, for me, that's what I'm missing. But also, here at Oktopost, we also are we're global and we have team members from all over the world working remote. It's fantastic. Everybody's very happy with the work setup, but I think there are some nuances that are being missed and we're not yet quite sure how to create them digitally. Do you find that as well?
Yes, I do. Like I mentioned before, I can't walk the halls like I used to. That was a gold mine for me. And I think also useful for team members to, just check in. Hey, how's it going? What are you working on? The water cooler talk, that sort of thing. It structuring that, planning that, it's not the same thing. And we've tried some different software that create virtual environments and that, and I don't know, maybe there's an answer there from a virtual standpoint, creating virtual workspaces or something. Well, maybe we'll send everyone Oculus headsets and have some sort of, I don't know, but it's like you say, it's something we're working on, right?
I think we're all working on it. And so, if anyone's listening in and wants to ping myself or Lee with any ideas, feel free. But speaking of structuring, I want to know from the B2B expert that we know you are, where should social media sit in an organization, in your opinion?
Well, I think as a consultant, I have to say it depends, because when you're looking at smaller startups and that sort of thing, it's a bit different than a large enterprise. And I'm going to assume you're talking about a large enterprise or larger organizations.
Let's talk about the large enterprise. Let's do it.
I find it most of the time it's been within marketing. Social sits within marketing, but here's the thing: social is as you know, a multidisciplinary. Creates value across different entities in the organization, from sales, right, to product development,
HR, right? It's a big
HR,
one.
yeah. Well, for sure, from talent brand and that sort of thing, customer support, right? So there's an interdepartmental aspect to this that I think is essential for organizations. And whether marketing is the leader or there is a seat at the table for social, it depends on the organization. But it's important, I think, for organizations not to leave all that money and insight, as it were, on the table, and make sure that they are activating in all the ways that you can, because so much is happening on the social web. And if you're leaving that out there, you're not tapping into that, you're really leaving it up to your competitors to take that away, or you're just missing out, right? So sitting in marketing is a good place because that's a very accountable organization. Marketing is usually, or maybe sales, I don't know, but it's a very accountable organization. And so I think that there's some, and it usually marketing usually does have interfaces with other parts of the organization. And so that'd be my answer, I guess.
I think it's a great one. I want to shift for a moment. If you Google your name, one of the biggest words that comes up time and time again is influencer. And it's just influencer, B2B influencer. And I think it proves, right? If you just take a look at your Twitter, for example, you have quite the following. I think it's like over 100,000 followers on Twitter, so something that we all aspire to be. So you're definitely doing something right. But what I'm curious to know from the words of an influencer, what does B2B influencer marketing look like in 2022?
Well, it's interesting. I've been fortunate to have lived on both sides of the fence when it comes to B2B influencer marketing, and for a very long time. I've been engaged by companies like IBM and Oracle, Adobe, and other B2B brands. And our agency, of course, has been providing influencer marketing services for just under 10 years now. 2012 was actually the first year we started getting paid by B2B brands to identify and activate influencers for content collaboration. So I think with the shift in B2B towards digital first, and a lot of B2B marketers have changed their go-to-market strategy to be digitally focused, and they're sticking with it because it works better than what they were doing before. There's a couple of opportunities in 2022 as it relates to working with influencers that I think folks can take advantage of. One of those, I think, is to make an intentional effort to build the influence of key executives and subject matter experts within the organization through social engagement, through content co-creation, with industry experts, right? It could be employee advocacy meets internal influencer marketing, some sort of hybrid like that. I think another one is to allocate more budget to professional influencers, where they can work with professional influencers who could deliver very high quality content and promotion to terms, right? They don't get paid, or there's payment associated with exactly those outcomes. When you're doing all organic influencer engagement, that's cool. The engagement is free and the value exchange is exposure for content, and you should still do that. Absolutely. But the demand is higher for buyers in terms of what it is that you're delivering as a B2B brand in your marketing. So you can really take advantage of some very, very talented B2B influencers out there who are great at media creation, borrowing a lot of skills from their B2C counterparts, actually. I think the third thing is really helping to break free of that boring B2B moniker by not just activating influencers for white papers and blog posts and making listicles and stuff like that, but engage those influencers in experiential media, obviously video, audio, interactive online content, webinars, events, and especially ongoing activations. Always, as we would say, always on influencer engagement, because then they become someone that is familiar to the audience in the context of the brand. And that elevates the trust even further, whatever it is that they have to say, whether they're an actual brand advocate or something less formal and simply advocating for ideas that are important to customers that are out looking for a particular solution.
So you just gave 3 really strong predictions of what B2B marketing, influencer marketing will look like, and also how brands can really think about it, get started, what's critical. Can you share and get radically transparent some of your best kept secrets that's never been shared before on how you think B2B brands should truly be engaging with these influencers, and what makes the most sense, or even, I'm just thinking, right? A lot of us marketers will have on our list in our marketing strategy, influencer strategy. And then what?
And then what?
Right. What are we doing?
One of the biggest things, it sounds simple, but no one's doing it. And so anyone I talk to that says, we tried and it didn't work so well, and I dig into a little bit about how they went about it, and it's because of this. So this is one thing. I don't know if it's a big secret or not, but you've got to lead with what's in it for the influencer, right? So many B2B brands are approaching influencers, and what's on their mind? What can we get from this influencer? They're thinking of what information can we get from that person and put it in our thing. And then, also, can you also promote this to your audience? That's all they're thinking about. And they're not thinking about, well, how does this influencer monetize? Right? What are their objectives? What topics do they actually want to be known about? Now, sure, there may be words in their bio. Maybe they're negligent in updating their bios. So the influencer monitoring software says they are most relevant for Celtic coffee cups, right? But that was just a passing phase, and that's not really what they're about for in 2022. So you've really got to take the time, do your homework, and find out what is their discipline of focus. What do they want to achieve, and then figure out how that influencer and their goals reconcile with what you're trying to accomplish as an agency, as you identify them as a good candidate or not. And if those things align, great, you've got a really great match. And they are going to be so happy that you actually approach them with relevance. The biggest buzzkill for influencer outreach is an irrelevant ask, right? No doubt about it. And even companies I've worked with for years, I'm just thinking of a company. I had to back out of an engagement. It's like, it was a paid engagement. And they wanted to be making stuff as if I was a designer. I'm like, I'm a CEO of an agency. I've got designers working for me, but I'm not going to go design stuff. Even if you give me money, I don't have time for that. Right. So it's important to be relevant, and trust me, that solves, like a domino effect of problem solving. Meaning this is a 2 or 3 for 1 solution I'm giving you here.
Do you think it's in good taste or bad taste, right? Because I've been in sales for 10 years before I moved over the dark side of marketing, right? And as a salesperson, you are like trained on finding the pain and, helping that customer. Would you say when reaching out to influencers, it's like that sales mindset of consultative selling? Or do you think it's a good taste to get that influencer, let's say if you can, on the phone and have that honest, open conversation, like, listen, let's work together and have, what would you like to gain? What are your goals? Or is that bad taste? Like, how open and honest should you be if you're not quite sure what you think would be in it for them?
So part of the best practices for influencer identification and activation is first understanding, are they putting out signals that they're even interested in behaving like an influencer? Are they already doing the kinds of things that you would call an influencer, or representative of what an influencer does, right? Because in B2B, of course, there are lots of subject matter experts, not key opinion leaders, but subject matter experts that don't like behaving socially.
Yeah.
They have an audience, they have a community. The way you approach that person, no, you're not going to ask them all those questions. They're like, I don't want to put myself in a spotlight. I don't even want to do that. So we have to recruit them in a very different way. It's a greater good sort of thing. We're going to make the world a better place. And here's how we see that you have a community that you're trying to advance technology or the discussion around topic XYZ. We're creating an opportunity for you to have a even greater impact on that. And so, we align with something that we already know they're trying to advance as a cause. But when we're talking about someone they're a keynote speaker, they're doing webinars, they're writing books, they're doing all the things, they've got an active social profiles, and they're doing all the things, then you can understand from those signals,
you can read,
they want to play the game.
Yeah.
And if they want to play the game and you establish, then you start talking about, okay, here's why it makes sense for us to engage, right? And you articulate what is the value proposition, why does it make sense for us, and then you get into the details of what's going to motivate them. You know what I mean? And so one way we do that is just an onboarding, what you can do that is with an onboarding questionnaire. And so we literally ask them to answer these questions as part of the process, and then that way we can more effectively activate them, because it's a bit short-sighted to think only that you're going to activate someone for one thing, right? If you it's not like a famous movie actor and I like Nespresso, I'm a sexy man in my 50s or whatever, and buy Nespresso, drink Nespresso. No, it's like over and over and over and over again, right? So you have to think about what's the relationship about, but you have to take baby steps for some people. And part of that process of building the relationship is collecting this information about what's important to them.
I really like that approach. So thanks for sharing that. We'll be sure in our next podcast to be kind of speaking about those two different camps, and maybe doing some role play there on how to make that ask, because from what I've seen, there's no playbook right behind kind of getting your influencer strategy. There's best practices you can follow, but I think when it actually comes down to it, it's almost like social. It's an art and a science kind of combined into one. And for every brand, it's a little bit different. For every industry, it's a little bit different. So super helpful there. I want to hop to a quote that I actually found. So one of the things I loved about researching you before I invited you over to the show was that you actually, if you Google your name, you have this like incredible like quotes from Lee that come up. I mean, and all over the place. But one of them that really stood out to me that I love, that I've actually written on an old school Post-it and put it on my bulletin board, right? Customers don't research solutions in silos. Why should your marketing operate that way? And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get this man on the show. But can you dive into a little bit behind like how that even came out of your mouth and like what you were thinking and why you said that?
Well, it's really about best answer strategies, creating best answer experiences for customers, right? And it's about empathy, right? You think about B2B customers are pulling themselves through the vast majority of the sales journey before they're reaching out to vendors, for more information. And they're doing that with content, right? And marketing's got to better understand how, how are those customers discovering and consuming information? And to be at that moment, to be present at that very moment that they need you with trustful, useful, engaging information, means that you're going to have a multi-channel offering out there, right? You have to have continuity of experience across channels in order to stand out, because there's, buyers are suffering right now from information overload, right? Just as an example, let's say somebody wanted to, they decided they needed a social media listening tool, right? Now, they might go to Google and type in social media listening tools, and boom, 2 billion search results. Like, at least for me, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. No, thank you. So maybe I go to LinkedIn, or maybe I go to a private group on a social media platform, and I ask the question like, hey, I'm in the market. Anybody got any recommendations? And so I get some recommendations, then I go back to Google and I validate, right? And then I go dig into some of those companies that were recommended by people that I trust. And now, of course, if people are smart about their advertising, I'm going to start to see ads from some of those companies. And, I might see someone who's influential, someone I trust in the industry is offering a webinar on how to create a social media listening strategy, sponsored by, one of those companies maybe. And I download something afterwards, a checklist, or there's a research report, I get a demo, schedule a demo, I do a trial, you know how it goes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about that, right? It's about, the fact that no one in B2B is doing an impulse buy.
We wish.
You know what I mean?
No, it doesn't work like that. And that personally, right, going back to what we talked and opened the show with, right? B2B is so far from boring. And for this reason, I think, is why. Because you can have a customer come at you from any direction at any point, and you really need to be prepared with the most basics of marketing, right? The right message at the right time. But at the same time, even then, right, you're still got to be on your toes. And this is the part maybe nobody really understands unless you're in it, how complex and how brilliant it can be when you get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's even some simple building blocks that people are missing. Like, they do have an understanding that they have the right message at the right time. One of the things, there's a sort of a trilogy of questions I make sure that we're always answering. It's like, what is it? That's simple, right? What does it mean for me? So that's where personalization comes into play. But then what do I do next? If we assume we're successful at answering those first two questions in any given piece of content, the third thing is what most people are missing out on, right? At least a lot of content marketers, not salespeople. So always giving them something to do next, right? And sometimes the next thing isn't buying, it's where am I in the stage in my evolution and my education journey, and give me the right thing to do next. But make it easy for me to do that, and make it easy for me to justify my decision, right? And then everybody wins.
I love it. Speaking of what to do next, so before I ask the last question, the next thing everybody listening should do next is really go head over to LinkedIn and follow Lee Odden, because he's putting out some pretty fun posts to whether you're learning about B2B marketing, heavily in B2B marketing, thinking about B2B marketing, you've got to follow Lee. So with that, the last question that I have for you to wrap up is, what is one thing that you can tell us about yourself that we cannot find from your LinkedIn profile?
I'll say this: right after high school, I joined the Army, and I served as a combat engineer for a couple of years, and I was very lucky, and I was stationed in Alaska the whole time.
That's
so I got
phenomenal.
to go climbing mountains and doing all kinds of fun stuff outdoors and whatnot, and learning how to do crazy things I'll never ever use in real life. But it was it was a good experience.
So I have to we've actually had quite a lot of marketers on the show, truth be told, who they fall into two camps. One I was less surprised about, but the other one, like my jaw came to the ground. So one, a lot of marketers, what's one thing you can tell us? They were a musician or performer or actor of some sort. Makes sense. Creativity, that field makes sense. And then there's another camp, and there's a whole bunch of marketers that I've interviewed that have a military background, myself included, that I actually hold a master's degree in counterterrorism and homeland security. So,
oh my gosh, wow.
So like when I hear your background in military, and it's not the first time that a marketer has this background, I mean, we might be onto something, Lee. I mean, maybe, right? Like, who knew?
It's all about standard operating procedures or something.
Right? Something is in the water there. But with that, thank you so much for joining me. I had a blast. Thank you for getting radically transparent. And for anyone listening in who wants to get some more tips or learn a little bit more about how TopRank could potentially help them with growth or marketing of any kind, where's the best place that we can connect with you?
Well, definitely check out our company website at toprankmarketing.com. We also have had a blog putting out like thousands. We have thousands of articles, but we have hundreds of articles about B2B marketing at toprankblog.com. And in fact, I think there'll be maybe a link in the show notes. We have a second ever research report. We did the first one not too long ago, and the second research report on the B2B influencer marketing. So if you want to understand what your peers are doing, where's the direction the industry is going, there's predictions, there's case studies, but there's contributions from about 20 different B2B marketers in here, as well as statistics from a research survey. Check it out.
I cannot wait to get my hands on that. So thank you, Lee, so much. And we look forward to hopefully round 2.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.